Hey everyone, welcome back. You know those excerpts you sent over about people and plants? Especially the ones that kind of mess with your head.
The psychoactive ones.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do a deep dive on them today. See, the thing is, these substances, like the hallucinogens, they might have actually played a part in, well, making us human.
It's a really wild idea, isn't it? The source material, it frames the whole discussion like it's some sort of journey. They even call it a pharmacological pilgrim's progress.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Where does this pilgrimage take us?
It all starts in paradise, which is like the beginning, where we came from.
Okay, makes sense.
Then we move to paradise lost, which is basically when we started to separate from nature.
Oh, interesting.
And that leads us to hell, which is where they say we are now.
Whoa. Okay, so not exactly a cheerful trip, but is there a way out?
Well, that's the big question the text asks.
Hmm.
Can we get back to paradise regained?
So, are they saying we lost something important along the way? Like, we're not as connected to nature as we used to be?
Yeah, exactly. And the text really lays it out, this whole idea of a dominator culture.
Dominator culture. What's that?
Well, they describe it as like hierarchical and materialistic and dominated by men. And they think this way of life has led us to feel like we're not really part of the natural world anymore.
Ah, I see. So what's the alternative?
The text calls for what they call an archaic revival. It's about going back to a way of understanding our connection with nature, and psychoactive plants are a big part of that.
So we're talking about, like, getting back to our roots. Literally.
Exactly. And get this, the text actually argues that hallucinogenic plants, especially the ones with indole hallucinogens, were a major factor in humans developing self-awareness.
Hold on. So they're saying that these plants might have helped us become conscious beings.
That's what they're suggesting. It definitely makes you think about human evolution in a whole new way. And they use this really interesting example from the animal world to illustrate their point. Have you ever heard of Jane Goodall's work with chimps at Gombe Stream National Park?
Yeah. Wasn't there something about chimps, like self-medicating with plants?
Exactly. Researchers observed chimps intentionally eating leaves from this specific plant, Aspilia.
And what was so special about these Aspilia leaves?
Turns out they have antibacterial properties, so it's like the chimps were using them to treat themselves.
Wow, that's amazing. They knew which plants to eat to feel better.
It seems that way. And it really highlights this deep connection between primates and plants. It goes beyond just food.
So if chimps can use plants for medicine, could early humans have used certain plants to, like, kickstart their consciousness?
That's the million-dollar question. And the text lays out specific criteria for what they call the plant, the hypothetical plant that could have triggered human consciousness.
Okay, what are these criteria?
First, it had to be from Africa, specifically the grasslands, where early humans were hanging out.
Right.
It had to be easy to find and eat, no cooking or preparing required, and it had to have, like, immediate effects.
So they're like botanical detectives trying to track down this missing link in human evolution.
Exactly. And they start eliminating suspects based on these criteria. For example, ibogaine. It comes from a rainforest plant, not the grasslands. And it's super intense with effects that last a really long time. So that one's out.
Makes sense. What else didn't make the cut?
Plants that have LSD-type compounds, those are pretty rare in nature, so they're probably not our plant.
Okay, so what's left? What kind of plant fits all these requirements?
Well, based on their investigation, tryptamine hallucinogens seem like the most likely contenders.
Tryptamine hallucinogens. Okay, I know some plants that fall into that category. Do they name any specific ones?
When you consider all the criteria, one species stands out, Stropharia cubensis. You probably know it by a different name.
Wait a minute, Stropharia cubensis. Isn't that just a fancy way of saying magic mushroom?
Bingo! The magic mushroom!
I get it now. They're potent, don't have any super toxic stuff in them, and grow in the same places where early humans lived. But how do they connect this everyday mushroom to the development of human consciousness?
That's where the text really gets fascinating. They explore all the ways psilocybin, the active ingredient in these mushrooms, could have affected our ancestors.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
Well, for one thing, psilocybin can actually improve your eyesight.
Really?
Yep. Now imagine you're an early human trying to hunt. Suddenly you can see way better. Talk about a huge advantage.
Yeah, that would definitely change the game. Literally.
Right. And the text also suggests that psilocybin could have made early humans more successful at, well, making more humans.
Right. How?
Maybe it helped them bond with each other, through rituals or something, and that led to stronger social connections.
Like early humans tripping out together around a fire.
Exactly. It's a totally different picture of early human society than we usually imagine.
Yeah, it makes you think about the role of these substances in creating a sense of community. But there's more, right? Didn't they say something about language?
Oh, yeah, that was one of the most mind-blowing parts. They suggest that psilocybin could have actually helped humans develop language.
Whoa, seriously.
Hmm.
Language is like the thing that makes us different from all the other animals.
I know. And the text even draws a connection between psilocybin and those stories about the going forth of the word found in ancient myths. They wonder if those myths are like echoes of an ancient time when humans first started using language thanks to psilocybin.
Wow, that's pretty trippy. But if this mushroom was so important, why did we stop using it?
Well, the text suggests that as climates changed, mushrooms might have become harder to find. So humans started looking for substitutes, like mead, the drink made from fermented honey.
So we started seeking out other ways to change our consciousness.
Exactly. And the text calls alcohol a drug of nostalgia for paradise. It's like we were longing for that lost connection we had with nature and the mushroom.
A drug of nostalgia for paradise. I like that. It makes you think about all the ways we try to fill that void today. But hey, before we get too ahead of ourselves, we've got to talk about soma, right?
Oh, yeah, soma, the sacred drink from the ancient Vedas. It's a total mystery, even today. We know they described it in these incredible ways, but we still don't know exactly what it was.
I know some people think it was Amanita muscaria, the fly agaric mushroom. But your source material seems to lean towards a different theory.
They present a pretty compelling case for soma being a psilocybin mushroom, at least originally.
Interesting. So there's evidence to support both sides. It sounds like we've got a real historical puzzle on our hands. And hey, speaking of ancient mysteries, what about those hints of mushroom use in Minoan art and the Eleusinian mysteries in ancient Greece?
It's definitely intriguing. We know honey and opium were used in those later traditions, but was there an earlier connection to psychedelic plants? Some scholars, like Robert Graves, seem to think so.
It makes you wonder how much of our history, especially our spiritual history, has been shaped by these plants in ways we're only just starting to understand. It's like we're rediscovering this ancient knowledge.
It really is. And that rediscovery is what we'll be diving into in the next part of your source material.
Sounds like a good place to pick up next time. Can't wait. This is just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, we're just getting started. It's funny. The text actually calls alcohol a drug of nostalgia for paradise.
That's a pretty deep way to put it. Like
Yeah.
we're trying to recreate some lost connection.
Right. And the text ties this whole alcohol thing to a bigger cultural shift, like moving away from partnership-based society.
Right. Towards that dominator culture, which makes me think about cannabis. They talk about that too, don't they?
Yeah, and they present it as like the opposite of alcohol. Cannabis is linked to those partnership societies, maybe even as a way to resist those hierarchies.
That's interesting. They talk about how cannabis has all these different uses, right? Like
Mhm.
practical stuff, but also psychoactive effects.
Exactly. It was good for making things, but also for changing your state of mind. It's a plant with a really long history.
So maybe when people started moving away from the psilocybin mushrooms, cannabis became like a substitute, another way to get to that altered state.
It's a really interesting possibility, isn't it? Like people were searching for different paths to that connection.
Yeah, it makes you think about cannabis in a whole new way.
It does. And it's worth remembering, we're dealing with theories here, interpretations, but the text definitely pushes us to look at these plants and how they've interacted with us in a totally new light.
It's like rewriting history almost. And speaking of rewriting history, they jump ahead to the 20th century and this psychedelic renaissance, right? It's like Western science rediscovered all this ancient wisdom.
Exactly. They bring up people like Richard Evans Schultes, who spent his whole life studying peyote and how indigenous cultures use it. He brought this knowledge to the Western world.
And then there's Albert Hoffman, who created LSD. That totally changed things.
Totally. Suddenly, these powerful substances were available in a whole new way. It led to tons of research and experimentation. The text describes LSD as a deconditioning agent, something that can shake up how we think.
Which makes sense when you think about the 1960s, right? All that social and political upheaval, LSD was definitely part of that.
Absolutely. It was like this catalyst for questioning everything, breaking free from those old ways of thinking. That dominator mindset we were talking about, LSD helped people challenge that.
So now we're in this new era of psychedelics. And it's not so much about rebellion anymore, right? It's more about healing and personal growth.
That's what the text emphasizes. They want us to have a more responsible relationship with psychedelics, not just for escaping, but for looking inward and understanding ourselves better.
Makes sense. These are powerful substances. You got to be careful with them. But they take it even further, right? Into the world of DMT.
DMT, yeah, it's like the most intense psychedelic we know of. The text suggests it might help us understand consciousness itself.
Wait, really? How?
Well, some people who've tried DMT, they talk about meeting these beings, or having profound insights about reality. Some even feel like they connected to some kind of universal consciousness.
Well, that's like next level. Are we just barely scratching the surface with these substances? Like, is there so much more to learn?
Those are the big questions the text asks. And it's this sense of wonder, this potential to expand our understanding of consciousness that's driving all this new research.
But they don't ignore the challenges, right? Like the drug war and all the stigma.
Definitely. They see the drug war as a symptom of that dominator culture. It's like there's this fear of people exploring their minds and changing their consciousness.
Like a battle for control over how we think.
Exactly. And that leads to their main argument. We need a new approach to psychedelics.
More open, less restrictive.
Yeah. They're calling for decriminalization and seeing these substances as tools for healing, not just for individuals, but for society as a whole.
So they want us to, like, totally change how we think about these substances.
Yeah. They want us to imagine a future where we use them to heal ourselves and the world around us. It's a hopeful message, isn't it?
It is. It makes you think about where we go from here. Wow, this deep dive has taken us on quite a trip. Ancient consciousness, the psychedelic renaissance, even DMT and other dimensions. I need a minute to process all that.
I know, right? It's a lot to take in. One thing that really stands out for me from all this is this idea that plants are like active players in the human story, not just for food or medicine, but for shaping our minds, even our consciousness.
Yeah. And they really get you thinking about the big questions. Paradise lost, paradise regained. Like, did we lose something important in our relationship with nature? And could these substances be the key to getting it back?
It's a pretty powerful concept. And what I find so fascinating is the text doesn't give you easy answers. It's like they're inviting us to really grapple with these ideas, to question everything we think we know about being human, and to explore the wisdom and healing that these plants might hold.
It's like opening up a whole new way of looking at the world. What really hit home for me was that sense of wonder. Like, we're only just beginning to understand the true power of these substances.
Totally. That's what makes this whole area of research so exciting. It feels like we're on the verge of like a whole new era of understanding, not just about plants, but about consciousness itself, our place in the universe, and the possibilities for healing and transformation.
It's not just about hallucinations either, right? It's about like tapping into different states of consciousness, different ways of seeing reality.
Absolutely. And that's why I think the text's emphasis on responsible exploration is so important. We got to move past the fear and the stigma around these substances and create a space where they can be studied, understood, and used in a safe and ethical way, not just for personal growth, but for the good of everyone.
It makes me think about all the research that's happening now on using psychedelics to treat things like depression, anxiety, even addiction. Could that be part of Paradise Regained, using these tools to heal ourselves and the planet?
It's a really important question. The text only touches on it briefly, but it's an area with so much potential. Imagine a future where psychedelics are integrated into healthcare, where they're used to help people heal and find deeper meaning in their lives. It's a hopeful vision.
It really is. And it speaks to the power of plants as allies in our journey. It's like we're remembering something ancient, something we forgot, and now we have a chance to reclaim it.
I love that. I'm walking away from this with a sense of hope and a deeper appreciation for how connected everything really is. It makes you realize that our understanding of the world and ourselves is constantly changing. Who knows what incredible discoveries are waiting for us as we keep exploring these uncharted territories of consciousness.
I guess it's an invitation to never stop asking questions, to stay curious, and to remember that the journey of discovery never really ends. And on that note, I think we'll leave it there for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.